Hello and welcome to Responders, a look at the emergency services operating on the Isle of Man. I'm William King. On last week's programme, we zoomed in on the Coast Guard and the RNLI. You can listen back to that through the podcast at manxradio.com. On this episode, we're focusing on the Isle of Man Constabulary. It's a very wide-ranging organisation, employing over 280 individuals, and in this short programme we're going to try and capture just some of what it does. We're currently in the Emergency Services Joint Control Room, just adjacent to Police HQ on Glencrutchery Road. When you call 999, the call is picked up here and the handlers dispatch the relevant services. Now, I'm recording this on a Friday evening, it's government pay weekend, and I've just been out with one of the patrol teams.
So my name is PC Kira Longshaw, my call number is 144.
And you are?
PC Malcolm Oates, caller number 146.
So we're based in Douglas, that's the primary place that we're based, however we're all island patrol. We're essentially response officers and we cover the whole island and deal with the offences that present themselves to us.
And so what are we going to this evening?
You never know what we're going to. We've had 2 calls tonight so far. One of the biggest things with this job is a lot of the times what you get sent to comes across one way, but when you actually get there it's completely different, so you can't have any sort of preconceived ideas when you're going. You just have to turn up and deal with what's in front of you. Yeah, the night's still quite young, so things do generally pick up as the pubs start, finishing and everyone heads to the clubs. So we'll just sort of see what happens.
Has the pandemic affected much of what you've been doing?
Since it ended, it certainly has. It's been pretty crazy recently. There's been lots of people letting their hair down after being locked down for so long. So I think the overall sort of drink-related crime has been up significantly to what it was before lockdown. But during the lockdown period, it was just obviously lots of COVID-related offences.
Yeah, so we're here on a Friday night, and your focus seems to be people who'll be coming out of the pubs and heading to the clubs. That they weren't open during the pandemic, so was presumably you were focusing on other things, maybe?
Yes, unfortunately, domestic violence was up significantly during the period. Obviously, people in close proximity and nowhere to release, whether it be the gym or other hobbies. So that was a big problem. But yeah, obviously drink-related offences did get cut down significantly. So it's nice to be back to normal though and see people out enjoying themselves.
And how many patrol people will be out of an evening?
Tonight I think there's around 8 community people. We have our priority team as well. That's about 6, and for the response side of it, minimum staffing levels are 12. There's 16 people per section, but obviously with leave, we try and keep above 12. RPU also will be out and about until the early hours of the morning, and then the rest of the specialist departments are all on call if need be.
How long have you been in the police, Mal?
I joined last May. I was in the building trade for the best part of 20 years. Fancied a change of career, then the police appealed to me many years ago, but I never went for it. So I took the plunge and changed career. Training was excellent. It's very varied, very, very rewarding at times. There is an awful lot of paperwork involved, or computer work, should we say, these days. Yeah. But you get them odd jobs where it just makes it all worthwhile.
When did you join the service, Kira?
Been in the service now for 2 years. Prior to that, I was a special constable, which is essentially like a volunteer police officer. And I did that in Lancashire Constabulary for 3 years, and then I moved over to the Isle of Man and then joined as a full-time police officer.
How does it compare over here?
I much prefer policing over here to what I did in Lancashire Constabulary. I believe over here it's a lot more community focused, which I particularly quite enjoy. And obviously, as a special constable, the role can be quite varied to that of a police officer. So you do experience a lot more stuff whilst working in the armed constabulary as a police officer.
How do you cope with stuff if you're attending something quite difficult to deal with, maybe emotionally, or if you attend something which there is a personal collection? Is that difficult to keep yourself together?
Yeah, it is difficult. You have to obviously remain professional, but there is very good support systems in place within the police. If you're struggling with something, there's people we can talk to, and obviously we can talk amongst ourselves. I'm young in service, but I'm older than most, so I've probably seen a lot more in normal life than some of the new people that are coming through now. However, there's people a lot younger than me that have seen a lot more in the job, so we all support each other through difficult periods. And as I say, there are other means as well, counselling, what have you, if you are particularly struggling with an incident.
Constables Kira and Mal there of the patrol team. Another part of Police HQ, which is busy on a Friday evening, is the custody suite, where I've been speaking to Custody Sergeant Stuart McLean.
That role is to look after the prisoners who come into police detention. My role is to look after the welfare and their rights whilst they're here. I'm not involved in the investigation. Predominantly I'm there to ensure the integrity as well of the investigation, to ensure that everything's getting followed. Officers are doing their role by ensuring the investigation is getting dealt with promptly, but also making sure the prisoners are looked after whilst they're here. And that could be seeing a doctor or seeing somebody from our mental health team.
So what sorts of reasons would people find themselves up here in the custody suite?
From theft, criminal damage, to something more serious like a domestic incident, to an assault, to even to an attempt murder to a murder. We could see somebody in here. There's a number of reasons, but it has to be justified why they come into police custody, because there's other ways and methods that we can deal with people by bringing them in voluntarily into the police headquarters where they can be spoken to, but usually there's a reason why they have to come to the custody suite, maybe because there's a greater degree of risk to somebody else, or thought there could be loss of evidence as a result, so that's why they may be brought in here. We have up to 24 hours we can detain people. We can detain them for longer than that, however it requires further authorities, but that's for the more serious offences.
Has the work of the custody teams, was it affected by the pandemic?
So we did have people come through here during the pandemic. Yes, we were in the front line. We were dealing with people who were positive with COVID, so we had to wear the shields, wear masks, and protect ourselves and protect our colleagues and our family as well. So yeah, we were affected because we were dealing with the frontline offenders of that. Post-COVID, where we're at now, we're seeing a bit of a surge of instances as a result of coming out of lockdown. That could be a whole host of reasons. Could be due to mental health, also in relation to the drugs. There's obviously the distribution of drugs. It's been well documented that it's hard to get drugs to Ireland because the borders have been shut. So we're starting to see the result of that in here, where people have been locked up for theft and for some violent offences and drug offences. On average, we see around maybe 10 people in here, and for two of us to be dealing with it's quite hard going and quite difficult at times when you've got that many people requiring different needs. So, as we say, we've got people who we have to think about for doctors, for the investigation, to ensure that's getting moved along, to ensure that they get the appropriate adult should they have any concerns around them understanding the system. So there's quite a lot of things we've got to think about in here to ensure we're protecting the person, protecting the investigation, and ensuring that we're moving things along as quickly as we can. So, yeah.
You did mention earlier about mental health services. What's your relationship like with the mental health teams?
Yeah, we've got a strong relationship with the mental health team. It's very important. A lot of the people we see come through here are affected via mental health, and a lot of it is related to adverse childhood experiences, ACEs, where we see a lot of the same people come in here and they're affected, and by having a good relationship with our mental health team, we can work well to ensure that we're delivering the right safeguards to protect these people whilst they're in police custody, but when they leave as well into the community, because that's where things can get on top of them.
An arm of the police force you'd be less likely to find at work on a Friday night is the Public Protection Unit. From the team of less than 10 plain-clothed officers, I spoke to Steph.
We're a department and we deal with primarily sexual offences, so that could be current or historic, and offences against children.
Are you kept relatively busy?
Very, very busy, yeah. We're based in an office. We work usually sort of Monday to Friday till 4 office hours, but that can extend to all hours, and we have weekend cover as well. We get our referrals, either people come in and report things themselves, we get referrals through schools or social services, or victim support and other agencies like that. So we work with a lot of different departments, a lot of different agencies, to help and support people that come forward and speak to us.
And it's the Isle of Man. How would you deal with it if you ended up having to sort of investigate something which might be linked to a friend or someone you've got mutual friends with?
Yeah, it's not surprising that does happen, but we're a really good team and work together really well. So if there's an investigation, for example, if I know the people involved, then the team deal with it. And likewise, if I've had an investigation where other members of the team are linked to the people involved, then they tend to stay away from it. So.
How long have you been doing the job, Steph?
I've been a police officer for nearly 5 years now, and I've been in PPU for 2 years.
So what sorts of jobs are you doing when you're in PPU? Obviously, we're not going into any cases or anything.
So when people either come to us or a referral's made to us, we'll make initial contact with that person, explain the investigation process, including going to court and what could happen there. And then we are, as a detective, we get additional training to our uniformed officers, and that includes doing video recorded interviews. So for children, primarily, and that would be their evidence in chief, so they wouldn't have to stand in the courtroom and give their evidence, and their video would be played, so that requires special training. And then, we support the victim throughout the investigation, with the help of other agencies, through the court process as well, so getting them to court, helping them through that, and then afterwards as well, because sometimes we don't always get the result that we hope for. Sometimes for people it's not getting to court and getting charges on the person. It's just about being able to speak to them about what's happened to them. Some people, a lot of people report stuff that's happened 10, 15, 20 years ago, and coming forward now helps them sort of deal with it and move on as much as they can, and just knowing that they've been listened to and supported helps them with that.
Do you need to be quite thick-skinned?
Yeah, it's describe it as being the best, equally like the best but worst job. I think it's really rewarding when you get to build a relationship with the victim and the people involved, and you get to know them, and I guess they get to know you to an extent as well.
Do you have to separate your personal life from this?
Yeah, I think it's good. You need to be able to have coping mechanisms to switch off. We're a really good team. We support each other, and we know if we've got a particular job that's upset us, we're good at noticing and looking out for each other, and it's good to have that support network.
Since 2016, the former police station in Port Erin has been used as the Police Training Centre, or to give it its official title, the Department of Home Affairs Staff Development Centre. Between January and December this year, a total of 25 constables will have been trained in the facility. I went down to Port Erin and started by speaking to Sergeant Donna Kearns.
When they first start here, they do 15 weeks in the classroom, which involves classroom assessments and practicals. Then they go on the streets and they do 15 weeks with a tutor constable, being shown the practicals on the streets and the live policing. And then throughout that, they've got a 2-year probation period where they'll come back here every so often to be refreshed on certain things, and it just goes on for the 2 years.
Thank you very much. Now, we've also got Steve and Steve here. Which Steve are you?
I'm Steve Tate. I'm a civilian trainer with the staff development team. I retired a year ago from the police, having done me 30 years.
What sorts of training goes on?
I'm one of the driver trainers for police officers who are qualified to attend emergencies in police vehicles, and a personal safety trainer as well.
So if you're Steve Tate, this must be Steve Hay.
That's me.
We've heard about personal safety training and vehicle training, what other sorts of things will people get up to during their 15 weeks down here?
Well, they learn the legislative side of police. They learn the law through dishonesty offences, public disorder, assaults, that type of offences.
And what sorts of ages would the people who come down here be?
It varies from 20 up to 42, 43, 44.
Does the training programme that you offer here link in any way to the training that goes on in the UK, or is it a completely independent thing?
No, we follow the guidelines of the College of Policing in the UK, but we maxify it to for our benefit, really, for the benefit of the public and the Isle of Man.
And if somebody comes over to the Isle of Man Constabulary from elsewhere, will they have to do some training down here as well, if they've already been a police officer somewhere else?
Yeah, we get quite a lot of transferee constables from the UK, and they get an initial course over here for 2 weeks. So we can, the difference in the legislation for their acts and our acts and everything over here, we'll take them through a training programme.
When people are training for the police, and we're going to speak to some of the actual trainees in a little bit, what do you want to get out of them most?
Then first and foremost, they need to make sure that they enjoy it and they actually want it. So it's just to get the best out of them. So they get their foundations here in the training school, and then they hit the real world out when they go out on the streets. It's just to get the best out of them and know that this is the career that we want to take, because it's a career like no other, and it's serious but fun sometimes.
Just finally, the police runs a cadet scheme. Do you often find people coming in here who've come up through that at all?
Yeah, I think in the last year or so, there's been a couple of cadets who then became a special, and then from a special, they've then decided, actually, this is what I want to do as a real career, and then they've applied to join full-time.
Connor and Olivia are both currently doing their police training.
I just think my problem is that the various jobs I've had in the past, I get bored. So, the police is one of those careers where you're never going to get bored, really, are you? There's obviously that much going on that your days are going to be different each day, and just the excitement of it, really, and as well just to give something back, really, and a bit of job satisfaction.
So what sorts of things have you done so far as part of your training?
So we've done a lot of dishonesty offences, so things like theft and burglary, things like that, assaults, criminal damage, that sort of thing. Last week and the week before we were doing interviewing, so all about interviewing skills and different question types, that sort of thing. And then this week and next week we're doing all traffic offences. So yeah, that's been a real eye-opener and very interesting.
Some of it will be written work and reading about it, but will there be some active stuff as well as part of the training process?
Yeah, so it's all about how you deal with either a witness or a victim or even a suspect, and how you question them, the methods that you take and your question types, how you take notes from your interviews, and really just how you get the most information you can out of it. So it's a bit of both. You've got to ask your questions, you've got to listen, and then obviously you've got to make your notes, so you've got it all written down. So
do you think you're gonna stick with it and become a police officer?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. I think the insight I've had into it so far, definitely think it's going to be a career for myself, yeah. If there is anyone out there thinking of joining, I would definitely recommend it. It's going to be such a rewarding career, and I'm looking forward to it.
I went to uni straight after school. I did criminology and psychology, really enjoyed the criminology side. So then I did a master's in criminal investigation, and that was more along like the policing side. I thought, yeah, this is definitely what I want to do. So I finished that in September, applied, and here I am.
What actually is criminology?
So it's basically anything to do with crime, and what I looked at the most was the way that criminals think, why they do what they do.
Has the coronavirus pandemic affected your training at all?
I think so, yeah. Obviously, we don't know any different, but at the start, when we did personal safety training downstairs, where we had to get hands-on with each other and practice all of our holds and things like this, we had masks on and gloves on, so we couldn't really get up close and personal to practice all of those things. And as well, we were meant to have a night out in the police cars, out on patrol, but we wouldn't get involved. We just oversee what's going on to learn a bit about what actually happens, to make sure that's what we definitely want to do, but we couldn't do that because we couldn't have more than a few people in a car at once, so that was a bit of a shame.
So you do 15 weeks down here and then 15 weeks tutor period. Is there then an exam or something at the end of all that?
No, so from what I believe, you're with the same tutor for those 15 weeks, and they basically, obviously what we know, they build on that, see how we are applying ourselves and things like this, and we have a 5-week review and a 10-week review that our sergeants do. So our tutors will basically just say whether we're, at the end of that 15 weeks, whether we need a little bit more tutor help or whether we're fit and we're fine and we can get on with it, really.
During your time doing the training so far, you'll have been in a group, I think someone said 11 people. How do you all get on with each other?
I think we get on really well, to be fair. I'm quite happy that we're quite a big group. We do things outside of work quite a lot as well, and we're quite young. The majority of us are between 20 and 30 anyway. But we've all got completely different experiences. We're all in different jobs. Some have been to uni, some haven't. And we've got a number of people from outside the island, but so far we get on really, really well, and I can't see that changing.
As we've already heard on this programme, the police force, along with everything else, was impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. The man who headed up the constabulary's response to the crisis was Logistics Sergeant Andrew Reid.
We planned for a 20% loss of officers. That was our worst case. We never ever reached that. I believe we got to somewhere between our peak 13%, something like that. But the shift pattern that we changed to would accommodate us losing up to 20%. Currently we have a 4-team shift pattern, and we went to a 5-team shift pattern, so we kind of put more police officers on the streets at more times. Plus we had to create what was called a COVID response team, which were specially trained officers that were separated entirely from the rest of the constabulary that dealt with nothing but COVID related jobs.
Now, you just said you had to put more people out on the streets, but that sounds like a bit of a strange one to me, because presumably was there not less to police out on the streets?
The fact is that we have to police the whole of the island, keep the island safe. Yes, crime went down, there was less people on the streets, but we had COVID checks to do. We had the policing still went on with people that didn't adhere to the rules and didn't self-isolate, and those that did breach COVID regulations. Although general day-to-day crime fell, there was still a role that was expected from us, and that would have been, as I said, helping the COVID screening centre. That would have been doing the port checks, the airport checks, plus people still call for police. We had lots of different types of demands on us that were created particularly by people being in lockdown.
Now, I want to just ask you briefly about PPE, because we've heard a lot about this protective equipment in the media. Did the Isle of Man Constabulary use PPE? Did it get hold of it successfully? Were there any challenges there?
Yeah, we did get given PPE. I have some still left in my office. We got it in time. We had a separate COVID unit, which I mentioned earlier, and they were fully kitted out with special overalls, a better face mask, breathing apparatus, that kind of, and they were specifically tasked to attend confirmed COVID incidents. So a call for police where we had somebody that we believed was actually COVID positive. Mm-hmm. The rest of us had masks, gloves and face visors.
Did any officers choose to bring in private supplies of this equipment?
No, I don't think they did. Certainly none that I know of.
We heard quite a lot during the pandemic when the government were making changes. If it affected one sector, sometimes the sector would come out and say, we didn't have any forewarning, this is all far too fast moving. All the changes will have affected the police. Did you have any prior knowledge as to what was going to go on, or like much of us, were you learning of these changes from the press conferences?
Obviously, we were aware of COVID was coming because we were watching what was happening in the UK and elsewhere, and we knew that it would come to us, so we had that advantage. And we were aware of the government strategy, in advance, because obviously we're an emergency service, we're part of that strategy, so we're aware of that. When it comes down to when the government implements that strategy, we were given notice, but obviously that's all I can say.
Andrew Reid there, rounding off our 25-minute whistle-stop tour of the Isle of Man Constabulary. Thank you very much to everyone at Police HQ for speaking to me. Thanks to those down in Port Erin as well. Thank you for listening. I will be back next Tuesday.